Hello, everyone. It's been a while since I've uploaded anything. It's been, I think, quite a few months since my last upload, since I was dealing with I guess a relapse of my mental health. There was a lot of things that I realized that I was having trouble adapting to, whether it be changes at work, the prospect of change at work, the loss of some close acquaintances, me having a difficult personal relationship, and then, I think everything kind of culminated uh, into feeding into the negative voice in my head. Um, I mean, I've always, at times when my anxiety it increases, the negative voice in me does get louder because my insecurities kind of hit me harder. Um, and, it's something that I definitely need to continue working with. And by all means, I switched over to a new psychiatrist. I'm making sure I be mindful of, watching myself, monitoring my mental state, which isn't always easy, considering that, I feel obligated to be there, whether it be for work or, for friends or family. Granted, I did have a period of quite a few weeks or months of isolation. So trying to get back out there, trying to get used to not being socially anxious when I'm around crowds or in crowded elevators or trains. Um, I tend to carry a squishy toy that I squeeze when I get panicky. I make sure to use my grounding techniques when it comes down to those moments. I also have a menthol smelling liquid that I apply on myself whenever I feel dizzy or whenever I am going into a slightly nervous state, which kind of borderlines between like anxiety and nervousness. Um, that did take quite a few weeks to get over. It's still a hump that I'm trying to work through, but things are getting slightly better. I took myself off of my medication, um, which may not have been a good idea because I was having so much trouble, getting used to or acclimating to my stressors. I don't necessarily want to go into too much depth, but I did take some time off, and I think overall, I had enough time to process things. And right now, like if anything does happen, I'm just gonna take it as a sign. Not that I'm not gonna keep trying, but I'm gonna take it as a sign from God that maybe it's time to do something different. Maybe it's time to kind of pivot. After all, life is all about changes, right? I think as long as like the change doesn't come at a sacrifice of others, and it is aligned with my own personal views and principles, I am more than happy to deal with that. um, One thing I do recognize by myself that my motivation to work for any type of mission or organization does come down to whether it aligns with my values. Um, um, it did take some time, quite a few years if you ask me, to finally learned that by myself. There are certain things you need to stand for. Granted, we are all living in a capitalistic society, or in a society in general. We have to work in order to survive because we need our income, and in order to put food on our table and a roof over our heads. So sometimes you do have to find a way to work towards that goal. So, I'm very lucky, and I do want to say I'm very blessed that I have the type of support network I have in my life, and I really want to take this opportunity to thank those that have been supportive, loving, generous, and overall just understanding of what I was going through. You know, just there was a lot of stuff that I didn't realize. I still have a lot of, I'm still processing through those traumas that I have spoken about earlier in my videos. I thought maybe I was in a better place, that I've healed. I was ready to embark in a journey to, to open myself to something, some more intimate relationships. But I guess, you know, things do happen, and I do think that sometimes relationships do bring out the worst in us. Or I wouldn't say the worst in us, but it does bring out certain things that, if we reflect back to it, perhaps it's really like some of the trauma responses that we had that we haven't really fully overcome. And I would take this moment to also urge people, if that applies to you, please, please, please take the time to do the healing, to do the reflection. Really, if you can, not everybody has a luxury to, but if you do have insurance or anything about that, seek out professional help. People think like, oh, we have to help ourselves. At the end of the day, sure, but we are humans. We are communal and social creatures. It doesn't hurt to actually get a second or a professional perspective to kind of structure yourself so that it can provide like steps that you can move towards. Burying and ignoring that quote unquote Pandora box just because you're afraid to reopen it is an indicator that you haven't fully moved on. And if leading on therapy is not one of your options, then I think maybe leading on something spiritual, speaking to a priest. But certainly, it does help to not keep it bottled up and, letting it out, but in a healthy manner. With that being said, I wish everybody, if you're planning to get back into another relationship or whatnot, please do the work. Remember, even if you're not doing it for somebody else, which you shouldn't be, you should really do it for yourself. Because once you are able to find peace within yourself, everything will kind of fall into place, if that makes any sense. You'll know who you are, you'll know what you want to pursue. Those negative voices that I feel like a lot of people do have, because we all have some form of insecurity, that will, you know how to cope with it, you know how to reconcile with it, and letting yourself know that it's okay. We're flawed creatures. The only person that is, I wouldn't say person, but the only entity that is perfect is Jesus and God. Because you have to be honest with yourself, nobody's perfect, right? So it took a bit to come around to it. Not to mention, I've also gained weight. I'm not gonna lie. I've been eating out. I've been eating poorly. Been sleeping a lot too in the past few weeks because I was dealing with vertigo and dizziness, which I finally got diagnosed. Nothing, not a big issue, but found a way to mitigate that. So thank God. Um, what else? Uh, Also, I have physical limitations, which I am working through with a medical professional as well, to recover. So there's a lot of things that are happening. I'm trying alternative medicine as well to deal with my ongoing eczema and digestive problems. So more about that later on. Uh, but I think these vlogs will still be far and few in between, just because I do want to focus on the present. I do want to focus on, you know, uh, discovering myself, working toward that person that I would one day be proud of, one day be okay with if anything just comes along, and waves across. And also wanted to continue to learn to love in a capacity where I'm not over jeopardizing myself. Um, because I do believe in love, whether it's friendship, whether it's a more like a partner, my family. I still working towards that stage of forgiveness from my dad, because I think, uh, overall, if I can get to that state, then I feel like I have fully moved on from that. It's gonna take some time, considering I did move out of my parents' place, I think, only 4 years ago. Yeah. So it's still, 4 years is a long time, but it's also not a very long time. So yeah, um, just taking it day by day. Um, uh, as far as other things are concerned, I'm trying to push myself back to doing diamond art, trying to do a little bit more reading. I feel reading and being in bookstores are very calming. The smell of, I don't know, something about the fresh smell of books is quite nice. I want to eventually get good, get well enough mentally and have a better focus where I could start studying again. And I do want to eventually do test prep for pursuing a certain professional certification. Um, if you ask me if HR is like my lifetime career choice, for now, I would say yes, but I would never say like things won't change later on. Um, Life does come around with some very interesting tribulations, really interesting opportunities. So just want to keep an open mind of that. I've seen many people who have pivoted to changing careers or changing the way they want to, do things, whether it's becoming an entrepreneur or creating your own, opportunity. People are, struggle in a sense does give us meaning. And I don't want to allow myself to run from those obstacles. I do want to build up the strength to be able to face them head on. Being resilient. And I hope everybody else feels the same way. And I know there are times when we are down. Don't let yourself fall into that very dark loop because life may not always be what we want it to be, but sometimes it's hard to find the strength to continue forward. But know that there is always someone out there thinking of you, you may seem to be alone at that time, but don't give up. Don't give up your future. I mean, at the time, it's probably really painful. I mean, I I have depression, but it doesn't necessarily mean I understand what everybody else who has depression goes through, since the environmental situation may be different. Maybe um, you know, your thoughts or what trigger your thoughts is also very different. I mean, something did recently happen with my one of my family's, I guess, quote unquote, previous friends, and it was very sad to hear what they were struggling with their depression. So my heart goes out to them and to anybody else who's struggling like myself. It's you know, there there is somebody there for you, and there's resources that you can reach out to. Don't be afraid. I know sometimes we're afraid of judgment. We're trying to push back the idea that emotion, mental health, or dealing with the stuff. It's like, oh, you feel if you can't deal with it, you're a loser, or all those things. But don't think that way. Don't if you need, just talk it out with somebody. Um, I would offer to help. The only thing is I'm barely managing myself, so I'm not in a place to help others. But also through the course of this period, I do think back to some of my previous relationships. Being on either side, I feel that once one party feels anxious, angry, in any way frustrated with the relationship, with the person and their relationship, that it will require a lot of deep digging, and also asking yourself if this is something that is sustainable. You have to be realistic and practical with yourself. Staying in there, they say, like, oh, love conquers all. To a certain degree, it could be true, but for some, it could be very detrimental. So make sure I think it comes down to, like, whether you value yourself or not too. You can continue to give and give, but if it's not reciprocated in the way you want, let me not say in the same way, but in the way you want it to be reciprocated, then it might be kind of moot to go on, because it just shows there's an incompatibility, right? I don't necessarily have any. I do feel sad, but I don't necessarily feel bitter or any type of regret about things. I just want to move on, first of all, about it. I also, I ask myself, have I tried my best, my very best in what happened? And I can honestly and confidently say yes, because I gave it my 120 or 150%. I believe, you need to put your whole foot in, or your whole body in, or whatever, in order to know if things are right. Granted, every time you give your heart away and it gets broken, it doesn't necessarily mend completely, but I don't want to turn into that bitter person either. I believe that everybody has their circumstances and situation that they're dealing with, that like myself, we do make our choices. Um, we will have to reconcile with it. But, I just want to handle things with a more compassionate mindset that, they had their reasons for acting that way. There probably are reasons why certain things don't work out, and then ultimately, was I listening to my gut when all those things happened. And I do hope everybody, um, you know, the best, that they're also on their road to recovering. Because I feel like everybody deserves happiness. Whether if you find happiness being alone or being in a relationship or being in open relationship, whatever people are into these days. But ultimately, the people say entitled to pursuing your happiness. I'll go further and to say like people are entitled to happiness. Everybody's form of happiness may be different, right? Just like everybody's form of or measurement of success is different. So, you would need to seek out that definition for yourself. So, yeah, with that being said, I think that's generally a gist of it. And that's the update. I do wish everybody well. May you continue to be blessed by God, blessed with kindness, um, blessed with, you know, mm, compassion. Remember that you don't you're not alone in your struggles, especially with your mind. You know, it'll take time. It'll take a lot of. It'll hurt like hell, but you will. If you really hang on to it through the pain, through the suffering, you will come out at the other end of the tunnel. It does take a lot of patience, so be patient with that process and that journey. It might take a very long time, but tell yourself it's okay. There might sometimes be setbacks. That's okay too. That's just life. If you have somebody you can lean on, that you can confide in, definitely seek those out. With much love, I'll see you or talk to you next time. Peace.